everyone. Welcome back from spring break. I am going to continue to read If We Were Giants, and we were on chapter 13. So I will start. When she arrived back home, panting for breath after climbing 200 feet, Loba and Maham were already there. They'd gotten the fire going again, and the house smelled like fresh stew. Her stomach rumbled. "Hello there," said Maham, stirring the bubbling pot. She offered Kira a smile. "I'm glad to see you are home safe." "Thank you. I'm sorry to be late." Kira took the pouch off of her back. "Where have you been?" asked Loba. He was hanging his hunting cloak, mottled with greens and browns to blend in with the forest, on a hook near the fire. It was damp, so perhaps he had been stalking prey in one of the swamps. Kira allowed herself to hope that maybe there'd be a night of crocodile steaks this week. That had become one of her favorite meals since coming to this place. "I had to go get salt. We were running low." "Oh, that's good. I didn't want to say anything." Maham smiled at her as she held up the ladle, but this dish could definitely use it. "Did you have any trouble getting into the caverns?" Loba asked. "I haven't been over that way since the fire." "Oh, I ended up not having to go there. I saw Mome, and he said we could have some of his." Loba stroked his beard as he studied her. Most adult men in the tree folk community grew them long. Kira had always thought they looked like the stringy moss that hung off the trees by the swamp. Maybe he should dye his hair green to enhance his camouflage, she thought. Normally she would never say that out loud, but the look on Loba's face made it clear that he was not in a joking mood. "Why would you go to his house and not the caverns?" Kira shrugged, trying to make it seem casual. "I just ran into him and told him where I was heading, and he offered to let us use his supply." She purposely left out the part about being caught up in the leopard trap. Loba did not need another reason to wonder about Mome. Besides, Loba had a way of making Kira feel guilty, even when she hadn't done anything wrong. Were all fathers like that? Or just adoptive ones who maybe weren't that crazy about the fact that they never met you in the first place? "How much did he give you?" Kira held up her pouch by the strings and gently shook it so he could guess how much was inside. Then she handed the pouch to Maham, who was clearly grateful to have something to do during this conversation. She immediately opened it and started seasoning the stew. Loba remained quiet. Kira looked back and forth between them. "Did I do something I wasn't supposed to?" Loba sighed heavily. He raked fingers through his damp hair to dry it out. Then he pulled his long locks back and tied them with a leather strap. "Look, I'm not saying you necessarily did anything wrong, Kira. It's just that we don't truly know Mome. He's not part of this family. What will he want in return?" "Nothing." Loba gave her a look. "Nothing, really? I mean, the next time I'm at the salt caverns, I'll fill an extra pouch and bring it to his house to repay him for the kindness." But he wasn't trying to get anything else. Loba stroked his beard some more. "Did he try to fill your head with more of his stories? He's not from here, you know." Kira looked at the wooden floor with eyes that had been threatened to burn with tears again. "I am not from here either," she said quietly. "Oh, honey," said Maham, "that's not what he meant. Loba was merely trying. He's not like you, Kira. When Mome came here, he didn't join a family. He didn't learn our ways, didn't try to blend in. He's always kept himself on the fringe." "Isn't that what we're all doing?" Kira didn't dare to say. "Isn't this entire community one big fringe?" Loba straightened up, cleared his throat. "I need to think about this. I don't know how much I want you talking to him anymore." "Fine." Kira could relate. After their conversation by the lake, she wasn't sure how much more she wanted to keep talking to Mome either. Maham tried to break the awkward silence. "Well, I'm sorry you couldn't go straight to the caverns. I hope the rainy season gets here soon. It's long overdue, but when it comes, we won't have to worry about any more wildfires." "The rainy season might not be here yet, but I am," a voice said. All three of them jumped in surprise, Maham dropping the ladle and splashing soup on herself. They looked up to see Luan's head poking down through the hole in the roof, dodging its way in that to avoid the smoke rising through it. Kira felt relief wash through her. Luan's tactics could be annoying at times, but he had a knack for diffusing tense family situations, and she was glad he had shifted attention away from that uncomfortable exchange. By the gods, son, can't you come through the front door like a normal person? Kira couldn't help noticing that even when Loba spoke gruffly to Luan, there was still more tenderness in his tone than when he was telling her something nice. Luan's face disappeared. Normal is boring, he called, and then he could hear him thumping down the roof until he appeared in the open doorway. He knocked primly on the edge of the door and spread his arms wide. Is this normal enough? He flashed Kira a grin. Loba shook his head. Just get in here and wash up. It's time for dinner. Maham folded the table down from the wall, and they all gathered around it after filling their wooden bowls. This is good soup, Kira, Maham said. Thank you for making it for everyone. Loba, mouth full, grunted his approval. Kira smiled. Thank you, and many thanks for trapping the meat so I could make it. Loba nodded at her. The rest of the meal was eaten largely in silence. This was normal for most of the family, but not Luan. He usually talked so much that Kira was amazed he could actually finish his dinner at the same time, especially since he seemed to eat twice as much as anyone else. She knew what his silence likely meant, though there was something he wanted from his parents, and while he was waiting for the right time to ask, she would have bet any of her possessions on it. The thought made her stomach a little queasy, though. Just as Luan could diffuse any volatile situation, he could also ignite one in record time. Luan picked up his bowl, slurped the last bit of his soup, smacked his lips appreciatively, and set the dish down on the table with a clack. Then he stretched his arms over his head and let out a satisfied, ah, and looked around the table. So, parents, there's something I want to talk to you about. Maham glanced out of the corner of her eye at Loba, who merely sighed and pushed himself back in his seat. He crossed his arms over his chest and regarded his son with a stoic expression. Kira wasn't the only one who knew how to read Luan. So, I've been thinking. Loba grunted at that. We should be really taking more advantage of this unusually long, dry season. Loba and Manhan shared a look. And how do you think we should be doing that? His mother asked. Well, after the rain comes, you know how wild the river will get. All of that turbulent white water, and so deep, dangerous, some might say. Maham cleared her throat. Yes, we know this, Luan. It's why the river marks the natural border of our lands, a buffer between us and the tribes that lie beyond. Loba pointed at his son. It's also the reason you're not allowed to go down there. We give you free rein of the forest and any lands that lie to the east, but you are to stay away from there. Kira shifted uncomfortably in her seat. She didn't like this talk about the river. It was one long, winding, overflowing memory trap. Everyone at the table knew what had happened the last time Luan snuck down there without permission. Luan held up both hands in a placating gesture. I know, and I completely agree with you. But have you seen it lately? It's so low. I bet I could wade right across it to the other side. Not a chance. Loba slowly shook his head. We've talked about this already. The riverbed could be unstable, like quicksand that can suck you right under. There could be holes you can't see beneath the surface, or currents that could sweep you away. No, not going to happen. It wouldn't matter even if it's been 10 years since the last rain. Oh, of course, Father. Of course. I would never try to walk across. Luan's exaggerated tone made it clear doing that was the furthest thing from his mind. Well, then, Maham set her spoon down and pushed the empty bowl away. Why are we talking about this? Okay, please listen before you decide anything. You promise? Loba's expression said it all. Parents did not make blanket promises to their children, especially regarding unknown requests. Luan forged ahead. Right. So you know how my friend Tiha is really good at building things? She's amazing. He looked at his parents, an expectant expression on his face. as if seeking confirmation for this fact. Loba just twirled his finger in the keep-going gesture. Well, she hasn't been hanging out with us much the last month because she's been working on some secret project. But she finally showed us today, and it's unbelievable. It's this enormous raft, big enough to hold all of our friends. It's really sturdy, and we were thinking that. Loba pushed himself back from the table and stood up, giving his son a dismissive wave. All he said was a simple no. But Father, I need... The discussion is closed. But I'd be doing it for the family. Luan jumped to his feet to plead his case. Think of the fishing spots we could find, places no one had ever been seen. I could bring home enough to provide dinners for a month, or more. He looked to his mother for support, but her head was bowed as she collected the bowls from the table and stacked them up. Loba retrieved his cloak from the hook, patted it to make sure it was dry, then slipped it on. I need to fix a few loose planks on one of the trees to the northwest. He picked up a lantern and moved toward the door. Father, are you even listening? We wouldn't go far, I promise. I would be back in just 2 days, 3 at the most. Loba stopped in the doorway and turned around. Listen to me well, Luan. We do not go into the river. The forest is vast. It is enough. But think of all the fish I could. Have you ever known a hungry night in your life? Loba's voice was very calm now, quiet and even. Kira found it much more unnerving than when he raised his voice. Luan threw up his hands in the air in exasperation. What? Have you ever, even one time, gone to sleep hungry? Luan stared back at his father, and finally he said, No. Exactly. We have everything we need right here. He turned to walk through the doorway. You will stay away from the river, he said over his shoulder as he walked out of the hut. The silence was heavy after Loba left. Maham busied herself with cleaning the bowls and the cooking pot. Kira patched some clothes that had gotten ripped while she was climbing, and Luan sat quietly with his back up against the wall. He went to his hammock early without saying goodnight to anyone. But later, when Kira climbed down through a trap door to get into her sleep sling, she found Luan awake with his hands behind his head, whistling a jaunty little tune. Kira hung a lantern on the hook between their 2 hammocks. The 2 had slept near each other ever since she had first arrived. Seems like you're in a good mood, she whispered, especially considering, Kira made a face and gestured to the hut above them to indicate the tense conversation after dinner. Luan stopped whistling and raised one eyebrow at her. Don't tell me you actually believed all of that, he whispered. What? Of course. But you... Wait, what do you mean? Father never would let me go out on a raft on that river, not in a million moons. I know, so why did you ask? Luan and slowly shook his head in mock sadness. Oh, Kira, so much to learn about negotiating. What do you mean? Come on, it's a setup. All part of this game their parents play. He shifted in his hammock so he was lying on his side, facing her. Step 1. I ask them for something impossible. Step 2. They say no. Step 3. I put up a bit of a fight and pretend that it crushes me. Kira raised one eyebrow. So far, it doesn't seem like the best plan. Luan smirked. But all of that leads to step 4, when I ask them for what I really want. And since they feel so bad about saying no today, it increases the chances they say yes tomorrow. Oh. So what is it you really want? I'll show you tomorrow. Promise. Kira was curious, but she knew better than to ask him any more about it. Luan loved his little surprises, and she would just have to find out when he was ready to tell her. They lay there quietly for a while, listening to the night noises of the forest. A breeze rustled the leaves in a pleasant way. It wasn't strong enough to sway the hammocks. Finally, she said, Did Tia really build a raft? Yes, and it's amazing. I swear that girl could build anything. She felt a pang of jealousy. She was glad Luan had friends. She didn't expect him to hang out with her all day, but sometimes she wished she could do something to make her seem like more than just the poor victim he rescued. Why didn't you tell me about it? He shrugged. I didn't want to tell you, And besides, you really don't like to talk about the river. You know, you never go down there. You heard your father. We're not supposed to. I know, but all the kids do sometimes, except you. In fact, I don't think you've ever been down there at all since. I know the last time I was at the river, Luan. Right, sorry. Silence stretched out between them for a bit until Luan cleared his throat. Okay, time to get some sleep. Tomorrow's going to be an exciting day. He flopped over on his side. Exciting how? Kira wondered. But Luan was already softly snoring. She marveled with more than a little envy at how troubled a mind he must have been to able to turn it off that easily. So there were some pictures that were in the middle of this chapter that I am going to share with you, and then I will come back and say a proper goodbye. So here are the pictures, and have a wonderful day. So here are some of the pictures that were in the middle of the story. So the bonfire exploded, the flames leaping 20, 30, 40 feet in the air. As Kira emerged from the tunnel onto a ledge beside the volcano crater, she had to admit it was good to be back home. Kobar would have never guessed that any of these natives were clever enough, but they had to make a nest between the crater walls. Kira could see the swollen river rising to meet her. So remember when she was kind of trying to run away. And then here, there is something I want to show you, Momay said. So remember, this is when Momay brought her to the lake that had all of the ants. And then the sight of Luan there, trussed up like a wild animal and completely helpless, made Kira want to charge in. This is what Kira had been born to do. She is on the, and then the two groups met in an explosion of violence. So there were the pictures that were inside the book.